if you need the pointer.
Great, welcome everyone. The first thing I was told is like, please take your seat according to the order shown here, so that we know who is who.
Maybe you can group yourself in the center. Or?
Are we missing? We're missing. Who we're missing?
We can just join them.
The lunch is finished, so if the speakers can come.
Okay, good. So 4 of us for now. Great. Well, let's kick it off. I think 1 or 2 more persons might join us later, but for the time being, let's get cracking. So welcome everyone to this panel. My name is Max Riebol. I am the co-founder of Harbor Industrial Capital, which is a Polkadot-focused VC fund. Hello. And yeah, I'm very excited to have this panel, which is all about interoperability between different ecosystems. So, very important topic, especially like at a Polkadot conference. I always like to tell the story when people ask me, like, why did you guys decide to focus on Polkadot? My first answer always is interoperability, right? That's like the one thing that I think really defines Polkadot. Interoperability not just between the different parachains, but also with other ecosystems. So that's why I'm excited to have you guys here. Let's kick it off. My first question is kind of a warm-up question is, do you think the future of blockchain will be single chain, multi-chain, or cross-chain? Pick one of those 3. And do it in a combination of introducing yourself, just name and company, and then what do you think out of those 3?
Okay, so I'm Manon from Horizon. So we presented in Horizon this morning that layer 0 with also layer 1 on the EVM. So of course, interoperability is at our core today. That's a core feature that we've been working on for many years. And I think that the future will be multi-chain and cross-chain because we can't have all the answers to all the industries in one blockchain only. So we have to work all together. We have to work between ecosystems to share the knowledge, to share the strength, and to propose something to the public. So that's why it's really interesting for me today to work within different ecosystems.
Fantastic.
I would go straight into this answer, saying that future will be omni-chain. That is like
how do you define that?
It's a claim that we have at Bifrost because, as you mentioned before, like we are a liquid staking protocol. I'm Christian, growth manager at Bifrost. Bifrost is a liquid staking protocol that offers liquid staking token both on like Polkadot and Kusama, so like cross-chain within like parachain within the ecosystem, and also like on different ecosystems such as Filecoin, such as Ethereum. So I see, as she also mentioned, that the future cannot be like not focus only on like a single chain, but not even like on a group or an aggregate of parachain within just the same ecosystem, but it should be like kind of spread around. But we will have the chance, I believe, to discuss this later.
So my name is Thomas Letan. I'm working at Nomadic Labs on the Tezos blockchain. And to be completely transparent, the interoperability of blockchain is something that we have yet to invest a bit more. That being said, so from our understanding and what we foresee in the future is to have a consolidation of layer 1, like to have 4 or 5 main layer 1s that remains and survive, if I can use the best word. But to have a multiplication of layer 2s that are that are created as the need arise. And for these layer 2s and for the few I don't know, but like for the remaining layer 1, there will be a need for cross-chain solution to happen indeed. So I would say like multi-chain, but in a small scale to some extent, and cross-chain communication between them and their application.
Hello everyone, my name is Sean and I work on Polkadot Labs. Personally, I think that it's inevitable that we will have multi-chains, especially with this new modular paradigm as a means to scale blockchains. And I think cross-chain as well is also inevitable, because if all of these chains become siloed, then we basically get back to the problem that we started from, which was this permissionless flow of value. And so I think it's inevitable that both things will happen.
Hi, I'm David. I work for Near/Pagoda. So obviously I agree with everyone else on the panel. That's what people on panels do. But
Don't have to.
No, but from a technical perspective, we're about 6 months away from chains being able to sign EDSA and ED25519 keys. And what that allows is basically chains communicating with each other the same way they communicate with their own shards, regardless of, because ED25519 keys are the lingua franca of blockchains right now. So when you add that feature to your blockchain, you'll be able to talk to every other blockchain, and when they add that feature, they'll be able to talk back. And I think it's going to be, we're going to stop talking about multi-chain the same way we stop talking about online businesses, because it will just be everywhere and unnoticeable.
Hi, so Sebastian from Arctic, so I'm the CEO of Arctic. So I'm come from telco industry, so the reality is just a multi-chain, it's just something helping to save the diversity of the ecosystem. So yes, at the end, and in our case, multi-chain is something really important to keep here.
Hello, everyone. I was late. Sorry about that. I'm Belma. I'm VP of Engineering. I work at ChainSafe. ChainSafe is building the core Web3 infrastructure. We are blockchain agnostic and working with different blockchains protocols. One of them, Polkadot as well. And yeah, spoiler alert then for my answer, but definitely leaning toward kind of a like cross-chain world. Because we want to be better than Web 2, and that means not building walled gardens. So I think we can definitely benefit from the interoperability in general in the future, like now and 10 years from now.
Fantastic, yeah. So sounds like everyone is kind of on board with a multi-chain / cross-chain approach. Nobody seems to believe in the Lord of the Rings styles, one chain to rule them all. But there will be like a multitude, there will be some sort of a multipolar world. And I guess one of the key questions that comes out of that is, how do you make sure that this cross-chain communication is secure? So my next question, therefore, is about like security in cross-chain communication. I mean, last year we had like a few large bridge hacks, right, that probably all of you are very well aware of. Wormhole, for example, Nomad, the Ronin chain. You know, there are lots of like bridges that got attacked, and literally hundreds of millions of dollars in those bridges were stolen. Obviously, it's very hard for a protocol or for a bridge or for an ecosystem to recover from such a hack. So I guess the question is, how do we avoid these kind of security breaches in the future? Therefore, my question to all of you, what have you learned from these kind of bridge hacks in the past, and how do you think we can ensure that that's not going to happen again moving forward?
What we learned the most with all that is that we need to, for the DeFi ecosystem to be more transparent. And we need also more tools. We need to all audit each other. When we propose a new partner to the ecosystem, we have to do the due diligence, but also learn to the user to do the due diligence himself. We have to provide something secure, but assure to the user that it is secure, but by letting him checking it by himself. So education is something really important. And I think that we have also to multiple all these partners. We can't only rely on one central entity or one audit company and just one bridge or one swap. We really have to propose many tools to users. That's the main thing here.
Well, security is, I believe, one of the reasons why back in the days like 2019, 2020, the Bifrost team decided to build Bifrost on Polkadot. The fact that we do not necessarily need any kind of bridge to exchange value across parachain. The fact that, for example, our liquid staking token can be provided to not only like parachain, but even like DApp built on top of parachain, directly like with, for example, like the interoperability that is granted by Polkadot, by the XCM, for example, the cross-consensus messaging, is a way to overcome this issue. This is something else, of course, when it comes to go outside the ecosystem, because, of course, as I mentioned, like providing asset to Filecoin, to Ethereum, in future in the pipeline, there is like, for example, also Cosmos, just to have this kind of interoperability with another layer 0, let's call it like that, ecosystem. It is something that we need to focus. I agree about like on the point of the education of the user. It's not always like super easy, especially like when it comes to newcomers to the ecosystem. It will never be, but I think it's a key things to push, because it's basically something that even if not many people knows about it, it comes to like their kind of own security for their own like assets, their own money. They cannot always rely on third parties. We saw like you mentioned like hack of bridges, but later earlier this year we had like bank that failed. So even like the TradFi system is not that completely like trustful. So it's something that it needs to be solved on different fronts. And when it comes to Polkadot, I believe that the whole like Polkadot structure already like gives a big help on this. So you don't have to necessarily rely on these bridges that even if audited, because all of the bridges that were audited that were hacked back in the days, where they have like very good audit. So
one of the aspects that I can comment in particular is that we probably have a lot to learn from other industries, software industries, in terms of how they manage security and things like that. Typically, for instance, like when you have a software that is used to manipulate millions and sometimes billions, I guess, of dollars, you are basically writing critical software where you might not kill people, although it, in the worst cases it might happen in terms of the impact on the life of people. But so you have a lot of things that are done. For instance, the Java card industry from your credit cards, the level of scrutiny that people that are writing software, like the VM of the Java card and the applet that are run on Java card, is something that I think is miles away from what we are doing in the blockchain industry on a daily basis. On Tezos, we try to have to leave the door open on formal verification and things like that, which is a subject I'm a bit more familiar with. But yeah, we have, I think, a lot to learn from other industries from this respect, to treat the software that we write. And you mentioned auditing, which is also a very good practice, and having third parties that are auditing the code with not the idea of exploiting it, but having an ecosystem that allows for this kind of thing is very important too, potentially.
So I'm going to go off on a rant here, so just pardon me, but a lot of the bridge hacks that we've seen has mostly been through some sort of centralizing force, either through, mostly MPC, really glorified multi-sigs who custody funds. I think for me, actually, the most interesting one was the multi-chain episode where I think the Chinese government basically detained the CEO and funds were gone, funds weren't safe. And the moral of that story really is that any non-light client-based bridge architecture is a ticking time bomb, fundamentally. It's not a matter of when the government decides to arrest this person. It is also, when this person might decide to pull a Quadriga CX, and be like, I have 500 million in my multi-sig. Do I really want to keep that for everybody, or do I want to keep that for myself, right? So these are the issues. And in a light client-based architecture, the funds aren't custodied by whoever runs the bridge. It's actually going to be custodied by the validators of the blockchains. Like, their signatures are the custody of the funds. So it's critical that people start to realize that if your bridge or whatever the trust model of your bridge isn't powered by the validator set of the blockchain, in question, then you're just giving someone else your money. The same way we all gave SPF our money, the same way, we're also giving all these centralized exchanges our money. It's a custody change, right? And then, whereas in a case where it's a consensus proof system, we are in custody of our money. And so, like she said, we do need education to make this concept more clearer to everybody and get people to try to start using more trust-free bridges. And you can actually, there's tons of trust-free bridges. There's IBC. There's of course the trust-free bridges between parachains. We've had no issues so far. So this is an architecture that works. We just need more people to adopt and start building these kinds of secure architectures.
Well, if you think the economics are bad, the tech is even worse. In a previous life, I used to audit bridges between networks. And someone comes to you and they say, can you audit this and make sure it doesn't have any bugs? And you say, no, because basically bridges are a sort of bug-for-bug re-implementation of the consensus mechanism within a protocol. And if you can get those two implementations to diverge at all, or if the protocol evolves, or if any number of things happen, and these protocols are normally monumentally complex, the smallest bug will mean you can get rolled. So I've, especially pre-light client days, I'm dating myself a little bit here, people would come in and just basically give you a whole protocol to say, are there any bugs in it? And you'd be budgeted 80 hours to do the audit. And you'd say, well, I've found a bunch of bugs, but there's probably still a bunch more in there. And then you see this thing's holding like $50 million a couple of years later, and you're just generally worried about the whole thing. So the model is too complex for it to ever really be made secure. What you need is to have you do a very simple thing, which is to sign payloads on your network. And then if you can sign a payload, you can send that signed payload to any other network. And it has exactly the same security properties as an individual holding the funds. You just sort of denote this individual. This individual happens to be controlled by a smart contract in another chain, but it's just message passing. It's just, can I deserialize the protobuf for JSON this person sent me on a smart contract, which is normally very, very easy. So I'm asking whoever here in the Polkadot ecosystem is, who actually builds things, please add the ability to do general purpose signatures on your network. And your bridges, your cross parachain bridges will get much safer and much faster. And your sort of outside of Polkadot bridges will be incredibly easy for everyone to use. So that's my...
Yeah, it's the same problem for us. So the problem we have is we have to integrate the whole of security on the other blockchain, and the other side, we have to have a strong understanding of the functioning of that blockchain also. So yeah, it's always tricky, but at the same time, that's a necessity. Otherwise, no way to provide a really universal ecosystem, which is a grail of any blockchain, because at the end, if we have no way to be sure basic user will be able to have something really interesting for him, yeah, it's a necessity, and at the same time, the biggest risk we can take, yeah.
When it comes to processes, first, like one important thing is governance. I think MPC case that was recent one was mentioned. Like, yes, there is MPC, but then it was wrongly used. Like for MPC, like you need to have multi-party computation. That does not mean like having all the keys on one server, and especially in favor of like one company or even one person. So like that was definitely wrong implementation, but like what's more wrong there is, you know, no one cared about that part. Like no one asked like, who are your relayers? I mean, people lost money there. And it's all unfortunate, but like we need to be aware of that. We need to kind of ask the right questions, and ultimately protocols should become more transparent. Again, like what I mean by transparency, what we're doing is, you know, here's a list of relayers, like they're real, they're companies verified in the community, but like also another level, here are all the addresses that are managing either multisig or anything related to that. So like, yeah, we even doxed our CTO, but you know, if we really want true transparency and we have want to have better protocols, that's definitely the way to go. And then second, like when it comes to security, I feel like that we can still learn a lot from Web 2 security and standard practices. It's great that we are doing smart contract audits and all of that, but there's also a bunch of more stuff that has been happening for infrastructure and IT in general. Human error, for example, phishing even. These are kind of things that we should be like learning from Web 2 industry as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks. So seems like most people here agree that bridges are a risk factor in the way they're currently designed. I remember like Vitalik Buterin had like a tweet where he said that bridges suffer from inverse economies of scale, which I find quite interesting. Is the idea that if it's small, right, it's probably going to work, and you know, because nobody bothers to really like attack it. But once it starts getting successful, right, and a lot of value is locked up in a bridging contract, then more and more sophisticated hackers go after it, and in many cases in the past, they managed to exploit those weaknesses. All right, I would like to linger a little bit more on the subject of security in interoperability, but bring it a bit more closer to Polkadot, since we're obviously at a Polkadot event here. So I'd be particularly interested from the panelists who are representing ecosystem, L1 ecosystem outside of the Polkadot ecosystem and outside of the parachains. What role, if any, in your opinion, can Polkadot play to facilitate interoperability between blockchain ecosystems outside of Polkadot? And obviously, like the guys of you who are already working on Polkadot, I'd love to hear your 2 cents as well.
So as the future is crushing interoperability, we have all but each other, everyone to provide tools, teams, and time to try to build each other on each ecosystem. But that's the goal of cross-chain transaction, of cross-chain interoperability. That's to work together to find the best way for the chains to have a seamless experience for the user, so he can go on one ecosystem and then switch on one other ecosystem without taking 2 bridges or to have to sign 8 times on his MetaMask wallet. So that's what we have to provide today to the user. And for that, we need to work all together. So the role of Polkadot and the role of Horizon, for example, would be to provide the teams to work together to make it work.
Me too. No. Working with, as I mentioned before, like working with liquid staking provider on Polkadot For me, it's easier like to answer this question because it's like basically that, as I mentioned before, is the reason why we choose Polkadot. Of course, like there are other like, you know, some upside down of this.
I mean, maybe one question more to you would be like, sort of which ways of interoperability with non-Polkadot based chains do you see from the Bifrost perspective?
Well, from the Bifrost perspective, definitely, for example, I had the chance before to discuss with Panther protocol. They're active on Filecoin, and we are actually the first liquid staking provider on Filecoin. They just launched their FVM, which is the Filecoin virtual machine. And we actually really believe that liquid staking is apart the fact that considering like over the last, I believe, 6 months, basically mainly because of the Chapella upgrade and the rise of liquid staking, everyone now is talking about it. You can see like, for example, on DeFi Llama, it's overcome like DEX's lending and other like this kind of protocol. The fact that having like liquid staking on like this ecosystem, for example, talking about Filecoin, it's something that allow us like to increase the use case of our product outside the Polkadot ecosystem. We, of course, need to rely when we go outside the Polkadot ecosystem on, like, for example, bridges, because we are using a different like contract for the token. But of course, like it's something that we are carefully putting in place because the security of like our asset and our user is always like come first, obviously. That's why we are not rushing, for example, to provide a bunch of new V tokens to hold the ecosystem out there that are like up for grabs for everyone. But we want like to be sure that first of all there is a use case in order to avoid like many issues like, I don't know, siloed liquidity on our protocol, and in order to provide the best use case scenario for user outside the Polkadot ecosystem as well.
So in our case, what we can expect more precisely in terms of interoperability will be for the layer 2s that we hope will happen on Tezos. I mentioned, for instance, this morning, the fact that we have a need for data availability solution, and that we are building a brand new layer that will happen on the side of the Tezos main net and peer-to-peer network. So it's yet another peer-to-peer network that we'll have to set up. We could imagine using existing infrastructure, and I guess it would make a lot of sense. The challenge for us, if we do that, is because of the nature of optimistic rollup, we will create some kind of dependency between the Tezos mainnet and another chain, which is not bad. In essence, I don't think we have a particular problem with that, but we don't want that to pose a threat to the liveness and the safety of the layer one, basically. So there are some challenges. And I don't think we really started to tackle those concretely, but this could be an avenue for interesting collaboration in addition to that. So it might be for futurists to actually tackle that. Yeah.
So actually, this is a question that I'm really glad you asked, and it's something that Polkadot Labs is actively researching, and we're hoping to make announcements later in the year. But if you go back to the Polkadot paper, actually, Gav, he outlines that Polkadot itself can be used to facilitate message passing beyond just parachains by essentially, you run the consensus clients, or even if you want even more security, you can basically re-execute any blockchain's blocks inside of the context of a parachain. So you also get this validity guarantees as well. And once you have those two things, basically every blockchain is now an L2 on Polkadot. They still have their own consensus because Polkadot actually follows their own consensus. But as a result, Polkadot can essentially provide what are the state roots, which also then facilitates storage proofs to all of the blockchains that are connected to Polkadot. So we're actually first looking at doing this for L2s, the optimistic L2s, optimistic L2s today don't have that finality on ETH L1. But if we re-execute L2 blocks on Polkadot, we give them Polkadot finality, which is instant. And now they can communicate with each other in a matter of minutes, no longer, in a matter of weeks, as they would, take on ETH L1. So this is like the more pressing applications I see. But of course, I hope that this scales beyond just the ETH L2s to all other blockchains that also want to take advantage of Polkadot's connections to all these other different blockchains.
So we are looking to hopefully have a degree of interoperability with Polkadot once we get sort of our smart contract governed private keys out. What we're hoping to be able to do is we have this sort of front end thing called the boss, and it should be very easy for you to program your smart contract to allow you to sign Polkadot transactions on the front end, and then use standard Polkadot front end libraries to sort of view the result of your action. So we're trying to basically allow people to transparently use a Polkadot app next to a Near app, next to an Ethereum app, next to in sort of using composable widgets on a page. And we're also hoping to put in what we're good at with what you're good at. You guys have a fabulous ecosystem and there's so much going on here. And we have a really lovely account model that makes it very easy to sign in. And sort of manage in-depth authentication and sort of control, make sure that you are only doing what you're authorized to do. So if you try and spend too much, we will make sure you really are who you say you are, much like you would in sort of a normal Google account. So hoping to bring our sort of onboarding, front-end stuff, decentralized hosting to your ecosystem as best we can.
So in our case, we are not at that level to ask that question, but at the same time, we integrated the specification smart contracts, so that means you're able to integrate a specific code on it. So yeah, it can be seen as a plugin and can be really helpful for the blockchain itself. Yeah.
It's great to hear like how others are building around that for Polkadot. I mean, this is actually our spot. Like we are service providers here in a sense of that Sigma is bridging natively assets or general messages between Polkadot and Ethereum currently. So like cross ecosystem. Like how we do that is natively to Substrate. What's good for us is like Polkadot. What did well is like how they implemented the internal interoperability between the parachains, so that makes our lives a little bit easier. But yeah, like for us, like we needed this, so we built a kind of way to be able to bridge cross ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So we're a bit more than halfway through in our panel discussion in terms of time. I want to move on a little bit, moving away from more the technical aspects and like the security aspect and more to the application aspects, like what's the use case, why we're doing that, like what's the whole point of interoperability. So maybe let's start with like some well-known and well-understood paradigms in crypto in general, DeFi and NFTs. What do you guys think within these primitives? What can you do with interoperability in blockchains? What kind of like exciting new, I don't know, DeFi applications can you do when you have like secure communication between different L1s, different consensus layers that you cannot do within one single ecosystem, if any? Or do we even need interoperability in DeFi?
Yes, I think that we need interoperability is not just to be interoperable between chains, but that's for the user experience. So no, I think that we miss the seamless experience at a wallet level, for example, because it's hard for someone to onboard now on the DeFi ecosystem. You have to learn blockchain, then you have to learn a bit what is finance, then you have to learn what is decentralized finance, that is different. So, and then you have to know how to handle a wallet, to make your seed phrase secure. So that's what we need today. So to onboard new people and to be able to tell them, okay, you can mint your NFTs on this on this chain and then sell it on another chain if you want. And but you shouldn't have the user shouldn't have to suffer from this experience. So that's why we need today more seamless experience and more more interoperability within the networks, with all the networks.
Well, obviously, like for a protocol like us, like Bifrost, interoperability is really the key. The big risk that you have, like when you use a liquid staking protocol, is that okay, you stake your dot, for example, talking about Polkadot through Bifrost, and then with your V dot, which is the liquid staking token of dot, you don't have anything to do because you don't have any use case. There is no operability available like outside the parachain itself, so you are pretty screwed. So for us, that was like our main focus over the last, I would say, 2 years. We try to implement, first of all, like the experience of minting, as you mentioned as well. Like we noticed that one of the threshold that the barrier that we needed to overcome was like to onboard new user was like to simplify the whole process. So that's why we put in place, for example, it's going to be delivered next month, a palette that should simplify the experience. It will allow user to actually mint their V token directly from the target chain. And also this palette will allow us to unlock, let's say, a lot of new use cases, like in collaboration with other parachain. We are going to, for example, deploy this palette first in collaboration with Moonbeam, then Astor, then like DApp built on top of Moonbeam on Astor, in order so that that users that have like V tokens are able to actually use them in like different ways. They can like provide liquidity to certain pool. They can use it as a collateral, lending and borrowing protocols. It's up to them basically. We just free their liquidity, and like without a interoperable system that works and that allow us to do this, that would be like simply impossible. And it's basically like the core of the whole like liquid staking concept.
So
Yeah, sort of more from the traditional verticals like DeFi and NFTs, say, how do they benefit from interoperability?
So as I said, like what we saw in the future, at least from the base that we do at Nomadic Labs, is to think like there will be a consolidation of platform, but there will also be a consolidation of protocols. So you will have some DeFi protocols that will emerge and are there to stay. And most notably, they won't want to be limited to one blockchain in particular, because that would be closing the door to other part of the market. And we are actually seeing that on Tezos, for instance. Most recently, we had our generative art platform that is starting to invest time and effort in going on EVM-compatible blockchains. And it makes sense from a business perspective. So the challenge that this move will bring is, as you mentioned, like to be sure that this does not fragment their user base, and that can be a way to bring them together on the contrary. So I would say that this would be the main challenge for them, and that if we are able at the platform level to bring standards and to bring tools and to bring this kind of solution, it might help having the transition seamless for them. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that they will figure it out themselves if they need to do that. Like they will find ways to bridge themselves. And so if we want to avoid a situation where we have these DeFi protocols and these applications that fall in the same traps as the bridge that you mentioned before, it would be better. So it will happen no matter what. But if we are building better bridges for them, it's better.
Right. So I'm actually going to take a step back to the keynote I gave about how interoperability is not just a primitive for cross-chain communication, but it's also a primitive for scalability. So here's a concrete example. Conventionally right now, say for instance, Uniswap has pools, and really it's just a pair of assets, and they all live fundamentally on the same chain. Say there's one asset pair that's getting a lot of people, a lot of attention, a lot of people are swapping. That single asset pair basically starves the rest of the other asset pairs for block space. So you can imagine if somehow we sharded every single asset pair to its own chain, now we have a much more scalable system, but it's still interoperable because if I swap, USDT DOT, I can still move my asset to a different chain that has a different asset pair and do whatever swaps I want to do there. And so this is actually a much more scalable way to design, DeFi systems, pushing past, the conventional systems that we've already seen. And of course, there's also the question, how does Uniswap unify all of its deployments across all of these different applications? How does it share liquidity? How does it rebalance liquidity efficiently? This is where interoperability will start to make DeFi even much more efficient, in my opinion.
Well, thanks for the question, but it's a huge question. So I'm going to pick one very small part of it to answer because I'm an evasive chap. NFTs, how they help by sort of cross-chain stuff. I absolutely love weird NFTs. There's nothing I hate in someone using some sort of high-tech stuff to put a JPEG somewhere. There are these NFTs which are ice cubes that melt as the temperature goes up in the ocean. There's ones that sort of use weird chain-specific stuff to mean that they have generative aspects that are sort of provably unique and provably only in one place at a given time. There's NFTs which are videos hosted on chain that can be contributed to from anywhere on a chain given certain situations. So cool NFTs need interesting chains. And right now, where you choose to put an NFT is the place where the money people will pay for it is, which sucks. And so I think the things you'll see from good interoperability is more creativity, which I think is always a great thing in this space.
So on Arctic, whatever it is, an NFT, a transaction, or a smart contract, is always a smart contract. In our case, a smart contract can be easily upgraded. So in that way, our feeling about it is just to, once you have an NFT, you can point to another blockchain, to another token, and also to store some data for it. So it's maybe another point, just to burn it and to have a new one after, maybe it's another approach, but I think it can be also interesting. Yeah.
NFTs are generally a little bit trickier. I mean, they're not as simple as fungible assets. So yeah, I unfortunately haven't seen yet good project or something in between that uses actually interoperability to kind of achieve having NFTs across the networks. Not saying that it will not happen, just hasn't happened so far. I don't think we're there yet, but definitely looking forward to weird NFTs. I like the idea of such creative market. When it comes to DeFi, I think it's a catalyst of everything so far. Liquidity needs are real, like we've seen the stuff in traditional finance world. So I think it will kind of continue to the need to satisfy the liquidity across all the chains and to be able to move. So that for sure. And one thing that was mentioned also, I mean, it's great when you're last, so you can reference a lot of stuff. Uniswap, so DeFi NFTs, but also messages, how to sync the data. Uniswap also has a DAO, and they are deployed multi-chain, so they have also governance that's multi-chain, and for them it's still not yet interoperable in a sense that works as a kind of a one organism. So those are one of the challenges when it comes to general message passing as well. There's definitely a need for that, accept only the assets.
Fantastic, yeah. Well, as David said, this is obviously a massive topic, and we could probably talk about just these primitives for much longer. But I want to go even further and think about other primitives or other, let's say, maybe verticals in a cross-chain environment. So that's why my next question is, what other use cases do you see coming up in a multi-chain or a cross-chain world that would not be possible like in a single-chain environment? Or maybe like another way to think about it is, are there like applications that, you know, and really think like further out now, like not just like the next couple of months, but the next 10 years, right? If we live in a true like cross-chain, cross-blockchain environment where it's really easy to communicate and safely, securely exchange value and information through different blockchains. Like what other kind of trends or what kind of applications do you see emerging that would not be possible otherwise?
That's a tough question.
And being the first one is always tough. We can also change the order a little bit if someone else wants to go first. No, not to put you on the spot.
I mean, I can jump.
Why don't you go first, yeah?
So I can't really speak on what kind of applications might exist in this cross-ecosystem manner, but I can speak on what I think might happen within the Polkadot ecosystem and its highly composable nature. And that's like, this also just keeps going back to my keynote talk, which was that like, I think that like, we haven't really seen these multi-core, these multi-blockchain applications. And I think that that's actually where scalability lies, because think about it, one blockchain gives you, hypothetically, 10 transactions per second. You add another blockchain, that's 20. You add another one, and that's 30. And if you can keep adding as many as you need to and still be able to synchronize state across these blockchains so that a user can basically jump from one core that's congested to another core that's less congested, you start to have highly scalable blockchains. And I'm not talking, ZK blockchains. I'm talking about blockchains that can handle a lot of users at once. I think that that's going to be how interoperability shines, beyond just, like I said, cross-ecosystem messaging, but like being this primitive for scalability and for highly scalable applications.
Great, yeah, then let's continue this way around.
So I kind of see 10 years from now, the situation being, you know, when we get to a certain level of power with blockchains, you won't really be able to distinguish between an individual who owns something and some code running on a blockchain and a centralized web server. They're all just kind of entities with addresses. And you'll just sort of, you will pick the thing that's best for your workload and you'll slot it into this cool area, and you just kind of won't, we'll look back at this conversation and think it's terrifically boring. It's like us people discussing which subnet to use or whether Azure or AWS is the future. I really look forward to people not giving a damn and just picking what's best for them on the day and not worrying about losing out on any network effects.
Tricky. Yeah. So, for example, in our case, we have something which is unique. So, I'm sorry to speak about that. So, we have the capability to read the fingerprints and to generate a private key on it. So, it's a real body proof. So maybe that something can be used anywhere. So, but again, I'm like you. I have no use case in mind to that. Yeah.
The best technologies have no use case.
I don't know, like ideal scenario, I don't know. I have my Ethereum dApp that stores files on Filecoin. It syncs, works well. I don't care about using different wallet addresses. And then I pay all of that with my DOT. Ideal scenario. I don't know if it will happen. I don't know if I need that. But maybe it's possible 10 years from now. Maybe one day we'll kind of standardize wallet stuff, so these things will be possible, because we can imagine as much as we want, but like there are definitely technical challenges that also disrupt the user experience. So some things are just relatively not possible. But I also think that we can do better. I think there's a gaming panel right after that. That's also like an interesting use case for me. Like we definitely need like user abstraction as mentioned. So I don't know, I'm playing a game, but I don't know I don't want to know on which network are you. Are you on Near? Am I on Ethereum? Like maybe we just want to maybe play together, switch assets together, so things like that.
Right. Back to this slide.
No, that's all great points, and maybe I'll take a more global step, but that the user will tell us what will be the future in interoperability, in cross-chain possibilities. We have great use cases in gaming, and when I started in blockchain, I started 6 years ago. I didn't imagine that DeFi would be the big step, because I thought I didn't think that trading was something more interesting than the technology behind, but the user will tell us. We can imagine something today that will be the next huge thing, but tomorrow the user will tell us, oh no, that's gaming now. No, that's more trading possibilities. So we just have to continue to learn together what the user needs and to answer that.
Well, taking the angle of liquid staking in this, it's something that I was just discussing during lunchtime with another guy. Like, what if in the future, like considering now, like the proof of stake as a consensus method is like something that is taking over, like we saw with Ethereum, like Polkadot was kind of like designed like this. Like, what if everyone, that was the question that they posed to me, like what if everyone like decide to like stake through liquid staking, so decide to secure the chain, but then like unlock their liquidity and then use their liquidity like cross-chain on multi-chain, like, and trying to enhance this interoperability. Well, part of the fact that this is my piece of cake, but I think that this is something that could really open up a whole new kind of, I would say, narrative, absolutely. And like thinking about the fact that it's not longer like we don't longer need to use, for example, ETH to perform like transaction, but we can like come up with some other like method that leverage of like liquid staking token either on ETH, on Polkadot. And I actually agree quite a lot with her when she say like in the future it maybe won't be like the need to differentiate much between like Near or Ethereum or Polkadot. People like more or less like what you do today when you pay with your credit card. You have no idea what service you are using, no? Like you just stop in and that's it. I believe that in 10 years, 20 years, I don't know, it will take time for sure. Like the access to the blockchain ecosystem, to the so-called Web3 ecosystem, will be like this easy and like this scalable for everyone. Because of course we have to imagine that if most of the people say like Bitcoin is a baby and it's there since like 12, 13, no, yeah, it's already like 13 years. I mean, Web3 and like all of us, we are working on a technology that is just 5 years old, 6 years old. So I believe that the potential is huge in terms of like scalability and growth. So I'm very curious about.
So it's a bit of an improvisation, but I think that also one thing that could happen is that as the user base of blockchains in general, I mean like the overall ecosystem increase and more institutions and things like that happen, we might also have a push in terms of regulation and things like that to increase, like to have a reason to actually converge in terms of standard and things like that. And typically, I've had the opportunity, for instance, to attend to working groups from the computer industry, so nothing related, but the fact that they were all talking in the same room and actually publishing documents that they were intending to implement. It was also more due to pressure from the consumer and things like that. So this might also happen from this door too.
Fantastic. Time is almost up. I think we have time for one last round, if I'm not mistaken. One last round? Okay, great. Well, I would have had two questions that I wanted to ask you, so I'm going to throw both questions out there and you just pick whichever question you feel more like answering. question one is more about your average Joe, right? Like an ordinary user who's not very sophisticated about crypto in general. How can he or she benefit from interoperability? That's one question. The other question is more personally, like what are you personally excited about in terms of next steps in interoperability? So these are your closing remarks. One more round. I think we can use the regular order again, and starting with Manon.
Yeah, sure, but that's approximately the same answer for both questions. As I said earlier, that's the seamless experience. We give the example of the credit card. Now, when you use credit card, you don't know what is behind, and that's what we need with wallets today. But still providing the education, because I also believe in this world in blockchain where we are more free, and the freedom comes also with education, and so we need to have both to propose all these tools to be able to onboard everyone in the DeFi ecosystem, in the blockchain ecosystem, because it's not just about DeFi. In gaming, for example, to be able to give the opportunity for the user to use these tools without having to remember a seed phrase, but to have something secure, still secure, because that's also the problem. More you are comfortable, the less you are secure. So that's also the next step in DeFi, in the industry, in the blockchain, is to still be secure, but more comfortable for the user.
Yeah, actually, the freedom is what like brought me to this world back in the days. I have like I'm an engineer, like a building engineer. So when I got in touch with crypto back in 2000, I believe 19, it was like way out of like, you know, my understanding or my league. So I started to study it, and I was amazed by the fact that it really gives like people the possibility to, you know, like regain their the liberty and the freedom of like managing their own like property, asset, intellectual property, I mean, like economic asset, this kind of stuff. So like with that said, I believe that something that we really, and I hope that really take place like in the next 10 years, is something that on the educational side will allow people to actually understand the impact of this technology, and like so that everyone can actually understand it and benefit. No one needs to become like a dev to understand the importance of like regain property of like your asset, your freedom to interact with it. And in terms of interoperability, I really believe that in a 20 year, more, maybe less. I'm a bit like, you know, on like the safe side of it. But I believe that I mean, it took time back in the days like to understand what an email is or like how does the internet works. And now everyone is like, cannot think about his life without internet, especially like the 7 of us, I guess. So like, I believe that having this sort of like interoperability at scaled to a level that you have no idea what are you using, what kind of like service is like behind your everyday life that is like all managed by maybe a blockchain or a service like this. It's something that is really unspeakable in terms of like, you know, liberty and freedom for people, but also like in terms of technology, because it's way better than what we have right now.
So for the future, what I find interesting personally is that I am under the impression that there is two sides of the same coin. Like there are the people that want to use a product and don't care about if it is on a blockchain and if it is on which blockchain and things like that. Like we have a lot of feedback from our partners at Nomadic Labs, where they are explaining us that they are doing a lot of discussion to see how they could limit make people forget that they are using a blockchain. And then we have this discussion about the fact that If you don't do due diligence and if you don't care about what is the technology that you are using, then potentially the assets that you have, what is effectively a blockchain, are potentially at risk. So I guess that the interoperability, if done well, can help in the sense that if we are able to build interoperable systems that are truly decentralized, you mentioned that, and that can bring good properties out of the box, like without having to build an extra layer of security on top of them. It can help, and also it will help the adopters forget for a moment, oh no, it's on Ethereum, but I have my coins on another chain. So this actually might be a good avenue to reconcile these two different questions and challenges, I guess, that we have as an industry.
So I'm actually going to play the devil's advocate, because everyone's been saying that no one's going to care about what network that they're on, but that's kind of like been the complete opposite of what we've seen so far. Blockchain networks have basically become religions. And this is like consumer behavior, right? It's the same thing with like Androids and iPhones, or like electric cars and like gas guzzling cars. Like, there will always emerge this sort of tribalism whenever a new technology emerges. But this is why I'm also excited about interoperability, is that you can still be tribalistic, but still coexist with, what would be your mortal enemy in this decentralized cosmos, as it were. So yeah, I think that we will still have our own tribes, but we will all coexist through interoperability.
From my perspective, people choose applications that do useful things for them, and developers should choose L1s that are technically best for them, whatever they are. And the world of interoperability is those two just being done on a technical thing rather than an ecosystem thing, because you can communicate freely. I would just say quickly, the timelines we're hearing here for good interoperability between chains are huge. The technology exists today. It is a social failure that the L1s have not managed to pick a technology and decide to use it. Like these technologies exist, they exist on chains, they're good at what they do, we have lots of proofs about their properties, and we have elected to an extent to not work together and not come up with a way to communicate well between chains. And things are changing now, but I would love to see the talk of change followed up with actions on change. So, because realistically, if every single L1 big development company got together in a room and agreed on a protocol, we could be interoperable in 18 months, which would be an absolute game changer for our industry. It'd get rid of the fragmentation, and it always annoys me we haven't done it yet. So that's not the answer to your question.
Yeah, so on a previous life, I was the head of Orange Money, which is just the banking money from your mobile phone in Africa. So what changed at that time, it's just the time we opened it to partner. So to Visa, to electricity, to too many things like that. So we jumped to 10 million turnover to 4 billion. Just by that. So what I want to tell is just to focus only on blockchain ecosystem is good, but maybe it's not enough. If we want to target and to have a real mass adoption, we really need to be focused to the user need at the end. So it's our focus also. So.
Sorry, was the first question
Or like an average user, what's the benefits
average user
of interoperability? Or otherwise, you just tell us what you're personally excited about in the interoperability space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think actually a lot of users have actually bridged things, at least not so far, at least not in bear market. But in any case, I don't know, I think everyone should find their own things. And yeah, first of all, like try things out, explore more. Like we're still definitely a small community, so it's like good to learn earlier, pay the school fees when you get burned. But yeah, that's kind of my recommendation, just kind of everyone to find themselves and just try things and not keep on theory. But like what excites me, I just wanted to say, like in simple terms, like kind of having more trustless protocols. I don't know if that's something we can achieve, but I'm pretty sure, like with latest developments, we are definitely close to certain breakthroughs. So I really do hope that we can have trustless protocols. And since mentioned the tribes and tribalism, I also hope that we get rid of that. Like, I don't care which internet provider you use, so I eventually won't care, like, really which blockchain you are a fan of or whatever. So yeah, that's at least parts of future that I see.
Fantastic. Yeah, looks like we're heading into a cross-chain future. Most people seem to agree that we're going to head into an interoperable future as well. So my only last job is to thank everyone on this panel, especially the ones who are representing an ecosystem outside of Polkadot, to come here to this Polkadot event with us and to talk about interoperability. Thank you, everyone, and let's make interoperability happen.
All right.